maintained grounds. This was where she would live if today went as planned. This was where she would become Mrs. Christopher Blake, wife to a man she'd never met. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Remember what we discussed. This will save our family. Be grateful for whatever he offers." Simone took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. The butler, a kind-looking older man, greeted her with a warm smile. "Ms. Washington, welcome to the Blake residence. Mr. Blake is waiting in the study." Inside, the house was even more impressive. Crystal chandeliers hung from painted ceilings, and oil paintings and gold frames lined the hallways. Her heels clicked against marble floors as she followed the butler through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. "Sir, Ms. Washington has arrived," the butler announced, pushing open heavy wooden doors. Christopher Blake stood with his back to the entrance, staring out tall windows that overlooked the grounds. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit that emphasized his broad shoulders. When he turned around, Simone felt her breath catch. He was nothing like she'd imagined. Tall and lean with dark hair and piercing blue eyes, he looked more like a magazine cover than a businessman. But it was his expression that made her stomach flip. He stared at her as if she'd grown a second head. "You're Simone Washington," he said, his voice rough around the edges. "Yes, sir. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." She stepped forward, extending her hand. Christopher looked at her outstretched hand for several seconds before taking it. His palm was warm and slightly calloused, not what she'd expected from a billionaire. The moment their skin touched, he pulled away as if burned. "Please sit." He gestured toward a leather chair across from his desk. Simone settled into the chair, smoothing her dress. Christopher remained standing, pacing behind his desk like a caged animal. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the ticking of an antique clock. "My mother led me to believe you were." He paused, running a hand through his dark hair. "Different." "Different how?" "She said you were practical. Unremarkable. Someone who wouldn't complicate things." Heat crept up Simone's neck. "I'm sorry if my appearance disappoints you." "Disappoint?" Christopher stopped pacing and stared at her. "You don't disappoint me. That's the problem. I don't understand." He sat down heavily in his chair, loosening his tie. "My mother arranged this meeting because I need a wife for business purposes. A merger with the Hamilton Group requires me to appear settled and family-oriented. I thought she'd found me someone who would make this arrangement simple. And I won't." Christopher's blue eyes met hers, and she saw something like fear in their depths. "Look at yourself, Simone. You're..." He gestured helplessly. "You're beautiful. Stunning. Men will write poetry about the way you smile. You're going to complicate everything I've carefully planned." Simone felt a flutter of something warm in her chest. No one had ever called her stunning before. Her previous boyfriend had always made her feel plain, ordinary. But the way Christopher looked at her made her feel like she was glowing. "I promise I won't complicate anything," she said softly. "I understand this is business. My family needs help and you need a wife. We can keep it simple." "Simple?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Nothing about you is simple. Are you wondering what kind of arrangement could make a billionaire so afraid of his own feelings? Subscribe and comment below what you think Simone should do next." Christopher stood and walked to a bar cart in the corner. He poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey and downed it in one gulp. "Tell me about your family's situation." Simone folded her hands in her lap. "My father passed away 2 years ago. He had medical bills that insurance didn't cover. My mother works 2 jobs, but it's not enough. We're behind on the mortgage and the bank is threatening foreclosure. My younger brother wants to go to college, but we can't afford it. And your mother thought marriage to me would solve these problems. She knows your mother from church. Mrs. Blake mentioned you were looking for a wife, and my mother suggested me. I know it sounds old-fashioned, but my family is desperate." Christopher poured another whiskey but didn't drink it. Instead, he stared into the amber liquid as if it held answers. "What do you do for work?" "I'm a marketing coordinator at a small firm downtown. I make decent money, but not nearly enough to save the house or help with college." "What are your hobbies?" The question surprised her. "I like to read. I paint sometimes, though I'm not very good at it. I volunteer at the animal shelter on weekends." "Favorite color?" "Green. Like my dress." "Favorite food?" "Italian. Specifically, my grandmother's lasagna recipe." Christopher finally looked at her again. "Why are you willing to marry a stranger?" Simone considered the question carefully. "Because you're not really a stranger. Your mother has talked about you for years. I know you started your company from nothing and built it into something incredible. I know you take care of your employees and their families. I know you donated a new wing to the children's hospital without wanting any publicity for it. My mother told you that? She's proud of you. She also said you're lonely and work too much. Christopher's jaw tightened. I'm not lonely. I'm focused. There's a difference? He didn't answer, but something shifted in his expression. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with curiosity. If we do this, he said slowly, there would be rules. Boundaries. What kind of boundaries? Separate living spaces. We'd share meals and attend events together, but you'd have your own space in the guest house. It's fully furnished and has everything you'd need. That sounds reasonable. I'd pay off your family's debts completely. House, medical bills, everything. Your brother's college tuition would be covered, and your mother could quit both jobs if she wanted. Simone's eyes filled with tears. You'd do that. It's a business arrangement. I can afford it, and you'd be providing a service by being my wife. What else? You'd have access to a car, a clothing allowance, household staff. Anything you need or want. And in return? You'd attend company functions with me. Be charming and gracious, which I suspect comes naturally to you. Maybe travel occasionally for business events. Make it look like we're a real couple. Simone wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. For how long? 2 years. After that, we can divorce quietly. You'd receive a settlement that would set you up for life. And if I want to work during those 2 years? That would be up to you. Though I should warn you, being my wife will be a full-time job in itself. Simone stood and walked to the window. The garden stretched as far as she could see, dotted with fountains and rose bushes. It was like a fairy tale, except fairy tales didn't usually involve business arrangements and separate bedrooms. Can I ask you something? She said, not turning around. Of course. Why are you so afraid of me? The silence stretched so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because in 32 years I've never wanted anything I couldn't buy, control, or understand. And I've been in the same room with you for 20 minutes, and I already want all three. Simone turned to face him. Christopher sat behind his desk, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. The vulnerability in his expression made her heart ache. I won't hurt you, she said gently. You don't understand. I could hurt you. I could fall in love with you, and then where would we be? The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was ready to cross. Simone felt her pulse quicken. This powerful, successful man was afraid of her not because she was dangerous, but because he was already feeling something real. Maybe that wouldn't be such a terrible thing, she said. Christopher stood so quickly his chair rolled backward. It would ruin everything. I don't do love, Simone. I don't do messy emotions or complicated relationships. I do business deals and clear expectations. Then we stick to business. Can you do that? Can you live in my house, wear my ring, and attend events as my wife without it becoming real? Simone looked into his blue eyes and knew she was probably lying, but she nodded anyway. If that's what you need. It is. Then yes, I can do that. Christopher walked around the desk until he was standing in front of her. Up close, she could smell his cologne and see the small scar above his left eyebrow. He was even more handsome than she'd first thought, and the fear in his eyes made her want to comfort him. You accept my proposal? Yes. All of it? The money, the house, the boundaries. Yes, and thank you. You have no idea how grateful I am. Christopher reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. My mother insisted I have this ready. Inside was the most beautiful ring Simone had ever seen. A princess-cut diamond surrounded by smaller stones, set in platinum. It was elegant and classic, exactly what she would have chosen for herself. May I? Christopher's hands shook slightly as he reached for hers. Simone extended her left hand. The ring slid on perfectly as if it had been made for her. The diamonds caught the light from the windows and threw tiny rainbows across the wall. It's beautiful, she breathed. It was my grandmother's. My mother had it reset. I'll take good care of it. Simone. Christopher still held her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. Are you sure about this? She looked up at him, this complicated man who was offering to save her family and asking nothing in return except that she not complicate his carefully ordered life. She thought about her mother working double shifts, her brother's college dreams, the house her father had been so proud of. I'm sure. Christopher released her hand and stepped back, the businessman returning. Good. I'll have my lawyers draw up the paperwork. We can be married next month. That's soon. The Hamilton merger is scheduled for 6 weeks from now. I need a wife before then. Of course. Whatever you need. I'll arrange for you to meet with a wedding planner tomorrow. Nothing too elaborate, just something that looks appropriate for the press. The press. There will be some media attention. Nothing intrusive but a few photos for the society pages. Is that acceptable? Simone nodded, though the idea of being in newspapers made her nervous. I'll also set up accounts for you at several clothing stores. You'll need a wardrobe appropriate for various events. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. You're going to be Mrs. Christopher Blake. Image matters in my world. The way he said it made her feel like a doll he was dressing up for display. But she pushed the feeling aside. This was business just like he'd said. She was helping him and he was helping her family. It was a fair exchange. Is there anything else? She asked. Christopher walked back to his desk and picked up a folder. Moving arrangements. I'll send people to pack your apartment tomorrow. You can move into the guest house this weekend. So soon. The sooner we establish the arrangement, the better. Simone nodded, though her head was spinning. 3 days ago she'd been worrying about making rent. Now she was engaged to a billionaire and moving into a mansion. My assistant will call you tonight with details, Christopher continued. She'll also arrange for the car service to take you home. Thank you. He looked up from the folder. For what? Everything. Saving my family. The ring. The opportunity. It's not charity, Simone. You're giving me something I need in return. But as she looked at him standing behind his massive desk in his expensive suit, Simone wondered what a man who seemed to have everything could possibly need from her. The answer, she suspected, was something he wasn't ready to admit to himself. The black car pulled away from the Blake estate, but Simone's mind remained in that study with Christopher Blake. She twisted the engagement ring around her finger, still unable to believe it was real. The weight of it felt foreign, like wearing someone else's life. Her phone buzzed constantly during the ride home. Text messages from her mother, her brother Trevor, and her best friend Angela. Word traveled fast in their small community, especially when Mrs. Blake had been so excited about the arrangement. Angela met her at the door of their shared apartment, eyes wide with anticipation. Well, how did it go? What's he like? Oh my God, is that real? She grabbed Simone's hand, staring at the ring. It's real. Simone sank onto their second-hand couch, suddenly exhausted. And? Details. All of them. Now. Simone told her about the mansion, the offer to pay off her family's debts, the business arrangement that would last 2 years. She left out the part about Christopher being afraid of her, about the vulnerability in his eyes, about the way her pulse had quickened when he'd admitted he might fall in love with her. So he's basically paying you to be his wife for 2 years? Angela perched on the edge of the coffee table. Simone, that's incredible. Your family will be set for life. It feels strange though. Like I'm selling myself. You're not selling yourself. You're entering into a mutually beneficial arrangement. He gets a wife for his business deal and you get financial security. It's actually kind of romantic. There's nothing romantic about it. He was very clear about that. Angela raised an eyebrow. Was he? Because the way you're blushing right now suggests otherwise. Before Simone could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. Ms. Washington? This is Rebecca Chin, Mr. Blake's assistant. He asked me to call you about the arrangements for tomorrow. Of course. Thank you for calling. First, I'll be sending a car to collect you at 9 a.m. for your appointment with the wedding planner. Her name is Catherine Morris and she's expecting you at her showroom downtown. Simone grabbed a pen and started writing notes. Okay. After that, you have appointments at 3 different boutiques. Mr. Blake has opened accounts for you at each one. There's no spending limit, so please select whatever you feel you'll need. No spending limit? That's correct. Mr. Blake wants to ensure you have appropriate attire for various occasions. The stylists at each store have been briefed on the types of events you'll be attending. Simone's head spun. This morning she'd been worried about buying groceries. Now she had unlimited shopping accounts. Is there anything specific I should know? Just be yourself, Ms. Washington. Mr. Blake was very specific that he wants you to feel comfortable and choose things you genuinely like. After hanging up, Simone stared at her reflection in the dark TV screen. Angela watched her with concern. Second thoughts. No, not second thoughts. It's just overwhelming. Good overwhelming or bad overwhelming? I don't know yet. That evening, Simone's mother called 3 times. Patricia Washington cried tears of gratitude and relief when Simone confirmed that Christopher would pay off all their debts. Baby, I can't believe this is happening, her mother said through happy tears. It's like a miracle. It's not a miracle, Mom. It's a business arrangement. Sometimes business can turn into something more. His mother says he's a good man, just lonely. Don't get any ideas. We both know exactly what this is. But as Simone lay in bed that night, staring at the diamond ring on her nightstand, she wondered if either of them really knew what they were getting into. The next morning, Catherine Morris turned out to be an elegant woman in her 50s with silver hair and an impressive client list. Her showroom displayed photos of celebrity weddings and society events. "Mr. Blake wants something tasteful but not overly elaborate," Catherine explained as they sat in her office. "He suggested a guest list of about 50 people, mostly family and business associates." "That sounds perfect." "He's also requested that the ceremony take place at the Blake estate. The gardens are beautiful this time of year, and it will be more private than a public venue." They spent 2 hours going through options for flowers, music and catering. Catherine handled everything with professional efficiency, occasionally checking her notes where Christopher had written specific preferences. "He really thought of everything," Simone murmured, looking at his neat handwriting in the margins. "He's very thorough. Though I must say, he seemed quite nervous when he came in yesterday to discuss arrangements." "Nervous?" Catherine smiled knowingly. "In 20 years of wedding planning, I've learned to read grooms. Some are excited, some are indifferent, some are terrified. Mr. Blake struck me as a man who's about to get much more than he bargained for." The shopping appointments proved equally overwhelming. At the first boutique, a team of stylists had already pulled dozens of options based on Christopher's description of their upcoming social calendar. Evening gowns, cocktail dresses, business attire, casual wear. "Mr. Blake mentioned you'd need something for the Hamilton Group merger announcement," said the head stylist, a fashionable woman named Delilah. "It's a very important business event." She showed Simone a stunning red dress with clean lines and elegant detailing. "This would be perfect. The color will look gorgeous with your skin tone, and the style is sophisticated without being too formal." Simone tried it on and gasped at her reflection. The dress fit perfectly and made her look confident and polished. It was exactly what she would have chosen for herself if money had been no object. "We'll take it," she said. "Excellent choice. Now let's talk about shoes." By the end of the day, Simone had accumulated enough clothes to fill 2 walk-in closets. Evening wear, business attire, casual outfits, shoes, accessories. Everything was beautiful and well made, and all of it had been chosen with her preferences in mind. The stylists at each store had been briefed on her size, her coloring, and her personal style. Someone had been paying attention to details she'd barely mentioned. That evening, Christopher called personally. "How did everything go today?" "It was wonderful. Thank you so much for all of this. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't need to repay me. Did you find everything you needed?" "More than I needed. You really didn't have to do so much." "Yes, I did. You're going to be my wife, Simone. I want you to feel comfortable in that role." Something in his tone made her pause. "Christopher, are you okay?" A long silence. "I've been thinking about yesterday. About our conversation." "What about it?" "I may have been too blunt about the boundaries. I don't want you to think I don't respect you." "I don't think that at all." "Good. Because I do respect you. What you're doing for your family, agreeing to this arrangement, it's admirable." "What you're doing for my family is admirable." "It's just money, Simone." "Not to us. To us, it's everything." Another pause. "I want you to know that even though this is a business arrangement, I'll never treat you like an employee. You'll be my wife, and you deserve to be treated with dignity and consideration." Warmth spread through Simone's chest. "Thank you. Also, I've arranged for movers to pack your apartment tomorrow. Is that acceptable?" "Yes, of course." "And Simone?" "Yes. If you need anything at all, call me directly. Not Rebecca, not anyone else. Me." After they hung up, Simone sat in her empty apartment, surrounded by boxes, and wondered why a simple act of kindness from her future business partner husband made her heart race. The answer scared her almost as much as it would have scared him. Moving day arrived with surprising efficiency. Christopher's team packed Simone's entire life into neat, labeled boxes within 3 hours. She stood in her empty apartment, keys in hand, feeling like she was closing one book and opening another. The guest house on the Blake estate took her breath away. 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, a living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens, and a study lined with built-in bookshelves. It was bigger and more luxurious than any place she'd ever lived. "I hope you find it comfortable," Christopher said, appearing in the doorway as the movers finished bringing in her boxes. He looked different today. Still impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, but his tie was loosened and his sleeves were rolled up, More relaxed, somehow more human. It's incredible. You really didn't have to give me so much space. I wanted you to feel at home. Simone walked to the windows. The view was spectacular, with perfectly manicured gardens stretching toward a small lake in the distance. How long have you lived here? I bought the estate 5 years ago. The guest house was already here, but I had it renovated last year. For guests. Christopher joined her at the window. I don't really have guests. I had it renovated because, well, I'm not sure why. They stood side by side, not quite touching, watching gardeners tend to the rose bushes. Simone was acutely aware of his presence, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way he seemed to consider every word before speaking. The movers left your clothes in the master bedroom, he said eventually. I can have them moved if you prefer the other room. The master bedroom is fine. Thank you. There's something else we need to discuss. He walked to the kitchen island where a manila folder waited. The marriage contract. Simone's stomach tightened. Somehow, seeing their arrangement reduced to legal documents made it feel more real and more businesslike at the same time. My lawyers prepared this based on our conversation yesterday, Christopher continued. It outlines all the terms we discussed, plus a few additional details. Simone opened the folder. The contract was surprisingly straightforward, written in plain English rather than legal jargon. As Christopher had promised, it included payment of all her family's debts, educational expenses for Trevor, and a generous monthly allowance for her personal needs. The settlement amount after 2 years, she said, pointing to a number that made her dizzy. This seems like too much. It's fair compensation for 2 years of your life. But I'm getting so much more than I'm giving. Christopher leaned against the counter, studying her face. You're giving up your freedom, Simone? Your ability to date other people, to make major life decisions without consulting me, to live your life on your own terms. That has value. I suppose. She continued reading. What's this clause about social media? I'd prefer if you didn't post about our private life. Business events and public appearances are fine, but I value privacy. That makes sense. And this section about travel. Some business trips will require you to accompany me. Are you comfortable with that? Of course. It sounds exciting actually. I've never traveled much. Something shifted in Christopher's expression. Where would you like to go? If you could travel anywhere. The question caught her off guard. I don't know. Europe maybe. I've always wanted to see the art museums in Paris. The Louvre. Yes. And the Musée d'Orsay. I know it's probably silly, but I've dreamed of seeing all those paintings in person. It's not silly at all. Their eyes met across the kitchen island, and for a moment, the contract between them seemed less important than the conversation they were having. There's one more thing, Christopher said, his tone becoming more formal again. Dinner. Dinner? I usually eat alone, but since we're going to be married, I thought we should establish some routines. Would you be comfortable having dinner together most evenings? I'd like that. Good. Mrs. Rodriguez, my housekeeper, is an excellent cook. She'll prepare meals for both of us unless you have other preferences. I'm not picky. Though I should probably warn you, I'm not much of a cook myself. That's fine. You won't need to cook. What if I want to? The question seemed to surprise him. You want to cook? Sometimes. I find it relaxing. My grandmother taught me some of her recipes. Then of course you can cook whenever you'd like. The kitchen in the main house is fully equipped. Simone signed the contract, her signature looking small and uncertain next to Christopher's bold scrawl. When she handed it back, their fingers brushed, and she felt that now familiar flutter in her chest. When do you want to have the ceremony? She asked. 3 weeks from Saturday. Is that enough time? Catherine seems to have everything under control. She's very efficient. They fell into a comfortable silence. Simone looked around the guest house again, trying to imagine calling it home. Christopher, can I ask you something personal? He tensed slightly. What? Why haven't you married before? I mean, you're successful, attractive. Surely you've had opportunities. I've been focused on building my company. That's not really an answer. Christopher walked to the window, his hands in his pockets. I've had relationships, but none of them worked out. Why not? Various reasons. Incompatible life goals. Different values. In some cases, they were more interested in my bank account than in me. That must have been painful. It was educational. Simone joined him at the window. Is that why you're so afraid of this arrangement becoming real? Because you've been hurt before? Christopher turned to look at her, his blue eyes serious. Among other reasons, yes. What are the other reasons? I don't want to hurt you. How could you hurt me? By falling in love with you and then breaking your heart when I inevitably mess it up. The honesty in his voice made her breath catch. What makes you so sure you'd mess it up? Because I don't know how to do relationships, Simone. I know how to do business deals and merger negotiations and hostile takeovers. I don't know how to do love. Maybe you don't have to know how. Maybe you just have to feel it. Christopher stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of green in his blue eyes. And what if I feel it and it destroys everything? What if I fall in love with you and become possessive or jealous or controlling? What if I try to change you or cage you or make you into something you're not? What if you don't? I can't take that risk. With anyone? Ever? I thought I couldn't. But then you walked into my study in that green dress, and suddenly I'm questioning everything I thought I knew about myself. Simone's heart pounded. Christopher. This is exactly what I was afraid of, he said, stepping back. We've known each other for 2 days and I'm already telling you things I've never told anyone. Is that such a bad thing? Yes, it is. Because in 18 days we're going to be married and I need to keep my head clear. What if keeping your head clear means missing out on something wonderful? Christopher stared at her for a long moment. Then he picked up the signed contract and headed for the door. I'll see you for dinner tomorrow night. 7 o'clock in the main house. After he left, Simone stood alone in her beautiful new home, wondering if she'd just made a terrible mistake or the best decision of her life. Outside, she could see Christopher walking toward the main house, his shoulders tense, his stride quick and determined. She was already under his skin whether he wanted to admit it or not. And despite all his warnings and boundaries and careful contracts, she was beginning to suspect she was under his too. Simone's first morning in the guest house began with a gentle knock on the door. She opened it to find a smiling woman in her 50s holding a tray of coffee and pastries. Good morning, dear. I'm Mrs. Rodriguez, the housekeeper. Mr. Blake thought you might like breakfast. That's so thoughtful. Please come in. Mrs. Rodriguez bustled into the kitchen, setting the tray on the island. He was up early this morning, pacing around the garden. Nervous energy, I think. It's been a long time since we've had someone new on the property. How long have you worked for him? 6 years now. He's a good man, though he works too much. I keep telling him he needs someone to take care of him. Simone poured herself coffee from the elegant silver pot. He seems very capable of taking care of himself. Capable, yes. But there's a difference between surviving and living, if you know what I mean. Before Simone could respond, her phone rang. Christopher's name appeared on the screen. Good morning, she answered. I hope I'm not calling too early. I wanted to make sure you slept well. I did, thank you. Mrs. Rodriguez brought breakfast. That was very kind of you. I'm glad. Listen, I have to go into the office today, but I was wondering if you'd like me to show you around the property first. There are some areas you haven't seen yet. I'd like that very much. I'll be over in 20 minutes. Mrs. Rodriguez grinned as Simone hung up. See? Taking care of you already? When Christopher arrived, he'd traded his usual business suit for dark jeans and a navy sweater. The casual clothes made him look younger and more approachable. Simone had chosen a bright blue sundress from her new wardrobe, and she caught him staring when she opened the door. Ready for the tour? He asked, his voice slightly rough. They started with the gardens, walking along stone paths between carefully maintained flower beds. Christopher pointed out different sections. The rose garden his mother had insisted on, the vegetable garden Mrs. Rodriguez maintained, the herb spiral near the kitchen. Do you garden? Simone asked, watching him deadhead a few roses with practiced efficiency. I find it relaxing. There's something satisfying about working with your hands. I never would have guessed. There are probably a lot of things about me that would surprise you. They continued to the lake, where a small dock extended into the clear water. 2 kayaks were tied up alongside a wooden bench. This is beautiful, Simone said, sitting on the bench. Do you come here often? Most evenings. It's peaceful. Christopher sat beside her, maintaining careful distance. Do you like the water? I love it. I used to go to the lake with my family when I was little. My dad would rent a rowboat and we'd spend the whole day on the water. He sounds like a good father. He was. He worked construction, and his hands were always rough and calloused, but he was the gentlest man I ever knew. Christopher looked down at his own hands. What would he think about all this? About our arrangement? Simone considered the question carefully. I think he'd want to make sure you were treating me well. And he'd probably try to fix something around the house to show his appreciation. There's plenty that could use fixing. Really? Everything looks perfect to me. The dock needs new boards. The gazebo roof has a leak. Small things, but they add up. Maybe I could help. I'm pretty handy with tools. Christopher turned to stare at her. You know how to use tools? My dad made sure I could take care of myself. I can change oil, fix a leaky faucet, patch drywall. Basic stuff. That's not basic. That's impressive. What about you? Did your father teach you practical skills? Christopher's expression darkened slightly. My father was more focused on business lessons than life skills. He died when I was 22, right after I graduated from college. I'm sorry. We weren't close. He was demanding, critical. Nothing I did was ever quite good enough. That must have been hard. It was motivating. Everything I've built has been partly to prove him wrong. They sat in comfortable silence, watching ducks glide across the water. Simone found herself studying Christopher's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way his hair caught the sunlight. We should head back, he said eventually. I have a conference call at 11. As they walked back toward the house, Christopher's phone buzzed repeatedly. He ignored it until they reached the guest house. I should take this, he said, glancing at the screen. It's probably James, my business partner. Of course. Thank you for the tour. Christopher hesitated at the door. Simone. Yes. Tonight at dinner there are some things we should discuss. About the wedding and about how we want to handle things publicly. Okay. And Simone? Yes. If you need anything today, anything at all, don't hesitate to call. After he left, Simone spent the day exploring her new home and unpacking her belongings. Everything she owned fit easily into one bedroom of the guest house, leaving the second bedroom completely empty. Around noon, a delivery truck arrived with packages from the boutiques she'd visited. Dozens of boxes containing all the clothes she'd selected. She spent the afternoon organizing everything in the walk-in closet, marveling at how different her life had become in just 3 days. At 6:30, she chose a simple green dress and walked to the main house for dinner. Christopher met her at the door, back in his business attire but with his tie removed and his sleeves rolled up. How was your first day? He asked, leading her to a dining room she hadn't seen before. Wonderful. I got everything unpacked and organized. Good. Are you comfortable in the guest house? Very comfortable. Though I have to admit, it feels strange having so much space to myself. The dining room was elegant but warm, with a table that could seat 12 but was set for 2 at one end. Candles flickered in silver holders and fresh flowers from the garden served as a centerpiece. This is lovely, Simone said as Christopher pulled out her chair. I asked Mrs. Rodriguez to make it nice. I thought we should start as we mean to go on. Dinner was delicious. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, and a salad made with herbs from the garden. They talked easily about their childhoods, their work, their favorite books and movies. Simone found herself laughing at Christopher's dry sense of humor, and she caught him smiling more than once at her stories. You mentioned there were things we needed to discuss, she said over dessert. Christopher's expression became more serious. The wedding announcement will be in Sunday's paper. It's a small item in the society section, but it will make our engagement official. What does it say? Just the basics. Christopher Blake, CEO of Blake Industries, is pleased to announce his engagement to Simone Washington. Wedding to take place in June. That sounds perfect. After that, there will probably be some interest from local media. Nothing intrusive, but perhaps a photographer at charity events or business functions. I can handle that. I know you can. He paused, searching for words. You're naturally gracious. It's one of the things I admire about you. Warmth spread through Simone's chest. Thank you. There's something else. The Hamilton Group wants to meet you before the merger announcement. They're having a dinner party next Friday and they've invited both of us. What should I expect? It's a test, essentially. They want to see that I'm settled and stable. That I can maintain a successful marriage while running the company. And you're worried I'll fail the test? Christopher reached across the table and covered her hand with his. I'm not worried about you at all. You could charm anyone. His touch sent electricity up her arm. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, and she found herself wondering what it would feel like if he kissed her. Simone, he said softly. Yes. I want you to know that even though this is an arrangement, I'll never ask you to be anyone but yourself. The woman who walked into my study in a green dress and completely changed my world. That's who I want beside me. Christopher. He pulled his hand away, breaking the spell. I should let you get some rest. Tomorrow we have appointments with the florist and the caterer. As Simone walked back to the guest house, she touched her lips, wondering what it would be like to kiss Christopher Blake for real instead of just for show. Behind her, lights glowed in the main house, and she could see Christopher's silhouette in his study window. He stood perfectly still, watching her walk away. Neither of them was doing a very good job of keeping this arrangement simple. 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Wedding dress fittings, menu tastings, flower arrangements, and guest lists. Christopher remained attentive but careful, maintaining the boundaries he'd established while being unfailingly kind and generous. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and warm, perfect for an outdoor ceremony. Simone woke in the guest house surrounded by garment bags and flower boxes, her stomach fluttering with nerves. Angela arrived early with Patricia Washington and Trevor, Simone's 19-year-old brother. The family reunion was tearful and joyful, with endless gratitude expressed to Christopher for his generosity. "I can't believe this is really happening," Patricia said, helping Simone into her wedding dress. The gown was ivory silk with delicate beading, elegant and timeless. "You look like a princess." "I feel like I'm in someone else's dream," Simone admitted. "A good dream though," Trevor added. "The college called yesterday. My tuition is completely covered, plus room and board. Mom's mortgage is paid off, and the medical bills are gone. Simone, what you're doing, we can't thank you enough." "You don't have to thank me. This is helping me too." But as she looked at herself in the mirror, Simone wondered who she was helping more, her family or herself. Over the past 3 weeks, she'd found herself looking forward to her daily conversations with Christopher, to their dinner together each evening, to the moments when his guard dropped and she saw glimpses of the man behind the careful businessman. "Mrs. Washington?" Rebecca Chin appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Blake asked me to give this to Simone." She handed over a small jewelry box. Inside was a delicate diamond necklace with matching earrings. "They belonged to his grandmother," Rebecca explained. "He thought they would complement the ring." Simone fastened the necklace with trembling fingers. The diamonds caught the morning light, adding the perfect finishing touch to her ensemble. "He has good taste," Angela said approvingly. "In more ways than one," Patricia added, squeezing her daughter's hand. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock in the Rose Garden. Christopher had arranged for a string quartet, an elegant flower arch, and chairs arranged in neat rows facing the lake. Despite the small guest list, every detail was perfect. At 3:45, Simone stood at the back of the garden with her mother, waiting for the music to begin. Through the roses, she could see Christopher at the altar with the minister, looking devastatingly handsome in a black tuxedo. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" Patricia asked. "As ready as I can be." The quartet began playing, and the small gathering of guests turned to watch Simone walk down the aisle. She moved slowly, her eyes fixed on Christopher's face. He watched her approach with an expression she couldn't quite read. Wonder, fear, and something else that made her pulse quicken. When she reached the altar, he took her hand and leaned close to her ear. "You're beautiful," he whispered. The ceremony passed in a blur of traditional vows and exchanged rings. Christopher's hands were steady as he slid the wedding band onto her finger, but she could feel the tension in his grip. "You may kiss the bride," the minister announced. Christopher hesitated for just a moment, then cupped her face in his hands and kissed her softly. It was brief, appropriate for the public setting, but Simone felt the impact all the way to her toes. The reception was held on the terrace overlooking the lake. Christopher was the perfect host, introducing Simone to his business associates and making sure she felt comfortable in conversations about mergers and market trends she barely understood. "She's lovely, Christopher," said an elegant older woman named Mrs. Hamilton. "Very intelligent and well-spoken." "Thank you, Eleanor. I'm a lucky man." "Indeed you are. James was telling me about the company's expansion plans. With a stable family life, you'll be able to focus even more on growth." Simone felt like a commodity being evaluated, but Christopher's hand on her back was warm and reassuring. Later, as the sun set over the lake, the quartet played softer music and several couples began dancing on the terrace. Christopher appeared at her side with 2 glasses of champagne. "How are you holding up?" "It's been wonderful. Everyone has been so kind. You've been perfect. Exactly what I knew you'd be." "What's that supposed to mean?" Christopher took her hand and led her to the dance floor. "Gracious, warm, genuine. You make people feel comfortable." As they swayed to the music, Simone was acutely aware of Christopher's hand on her waist, the way he smelled like expensive cologne and something uniquely him. Other couples danced around them, but she felt like they were the only 2 people in the world. "Simone," he said quietly. "Yes. Thank you." "For what?" For agreeing to this. For making it easy. For being exactly who you are. Christopher, I know. I feel it too. They danced in silence, both aware that something had shifted between them. The careful boundaries Christopher had established were becoming harder to maintain. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Christopher and Simone stood together accepting congratulations and well wishes. To everyone watching, they looked like a perfectly happy couple beginning their new life together. "Where are you going for your honeymoon?" asked James, Christopher's business partner. Christopher glanced at Simone. "We haven't decided yet. You should go somewhere romantic. Paris, maybe, or the Amalfi Coast." After the last guest left, Christopher and Simone found themselves alone on the terrace. The quartet had packed up, the caterers had cleaned everything away, and the garden was lit only by soft landscape lighting. "So," Simone said, suddenly feeling awkward. "We're married." "We are. What happens now?" Christopher loosened his tie, the first time all day he'd looked anything less than perfectly composed. "I don't know." "You don't know?" "I planned everything up to this moment. The proposal, the contract, the wedding. But I didn't plan what comes after." Simone laughed, a sound of nervous relief. The great Christopher Blake didn't have a plan? Shocking, I know. They stood side by side, looking out over the lake where tiny lights reflected on the dark water. "I should probably go back to the guest house," Simone said eventually. "Probably. Let you get some rest before your meetings tomorrow?" "Right." Neither of them moved. "Simone." "Yes. Would you like to go away somewhere? For a few days, I mean. A honeymoon, even if it's just for appearances." Her heart skipped. "Where would we go?" "Anywhere you want. You mentioned Paris once. You remembered that." "I remember everything you've told me." Simone turned to face him. In the soft lighting, he looked younger and more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. "I'd like that very much." "Good. I'll make arrangements." They walked together toward the guest house, moving slowly as if neither wanted the evening to end. At her door, Christopher stopped. "Mrs. Blake," he said formally, but his eyes were warm. "Mr. Blake," she replied with a small smile. "Sleep well." "You too." He waited until she was inside before walking back to the main house. From her window, Simone watched him disappear into the shadows, her wedding ring catching the moonlight. She was married to Christopher Blake. The arrangement that had started as a business deal was beginning to feel like something much more dangerous and wonderful. And despite all his careful planning and boundaries, she suspected he was feeling it too. Do you think Christopher will be able to maintain his emotional walls during their honeymoon? Drop a comment below and subscribe to see what happens when these two are alone in Paris. 2 days after the wedding, Christopher knocked on the guest house door with a thick folder in his hand and an expression that was equal parts excitement and terror. "I have our travel arrangements," he said, settling into the chair across from her in the living room. That was fast. When you have unlimited resources, things happen quickly. He opened the folder. "I booked us a suite at the Hotel Plaza Athénée in Paris. 5 days, 4 nights. Simone's eyes widened. "Christopher, that must cost a fortune." "Money well spent. The suite has separate bedrooms, so you don't need to worry about boundaries." The way he said it made her wonder if he was trying to convince her or himself. "What else?" she asked, leaning forward to look at the itinerary he'd prepared. "I arranged a private tour of the Louvre since you mentioned wanting to see the art. There's also a reservation at Le Muris for dinner tomorrow night, and tickets for the opera if you're interested." "You planned all this based on one conversation we had?" Christopher's cheeks reddened slightly. "I may have done some research on your preferences." "Research?" "I asked Mrs. Rodriguez what books you've been reading. I noticed you have several art history texts. And Angela mentioned you took French in college." Simone stared at him. "You talked to Angela?" "I wanted to make sure you'd enjoy yourself." The thoughtfulness behind his planning made her chest tight with emotion. "Christopher, this is incredibly generous. It's our honeymoon. Even if it's not a traditional one, it should be special." "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow morning." "I hope that's not too soon." "It's perfect." That evening at dinner, Christopher seemed more nervous than usual. He kept checking his phone and adjusting his tie, behavior she'd never seen from him before. "Are you all right?" she asked over dessert. "Fine. Just some work concerns." "About the Hamilton Group merger?" "Among other things." He set down his phone and looked at her directly. "Simone, about Paris." "Yes. I want you to know that this trip is for you. Whatever you want to do, wherever you want to go, we'll do it." "What about what you want to do?" Christopher seemed surprised by the question. I want you to be happy. But what makes you happy? He was quiet for a long moment. I don't usually think about it in those terms. What do you mean? Happiness seems like a luxury I can't afford. I think about goals, objectives, achievements. But happiness? He shrugged. That's not something I've prioritized. That's incredibly sad. It's practical. Christopher, when was the last time you did something purely because it brought you joy? He considered the question seriously. I honestly can't remember. Then that's what we'll focus on in Paris. Finding things that make you happy. I don't think it's that simple. Why not? Because happiness is dangerous. It makes you vulnerable. It makes you want things you can't control. And that scares you. Everything about you scares me, Simone. The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. Their flight to Paris left at 10 a.m. from a private airfield. Simone had never flown first class, let alone on a private jet. The plane was luxurious and intimate, with leather seats that reclined into beds and a flight attendant who anticipated their every need. Christopher spent the first hour working on his laptop, but as they reached cruising altitude, he closed it and turned his attention to Simone. Nervous about flying? He asked, noticing her white-knuckled grip on the armrest. A little. I don't fly very often. Would it help if I distracted you? How? Tell me about your paintings. You mentioned you paint sometimes. They're not very good. I'd like to hear about them anyway. Simone found herself describing her small canvases, mostly landscapes and still lives painted in the corner of her old apartment. Christopher listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions about her techniques and inspiration. I'd like to see them sometime, he said. You would. Of course. Art is personal. It reveals things about the artist. What would my paintings reveal about me? Christopher studied her face. That you see beauty in ordinary things. That you're patient. That you pay attention to details others miss. How could you possibly know that? Because that's who you are. In everything you do. The flight continued with easy conversation about books, movies, and travel dreams. Christopher was an excellent storyteller when he relaxed, and Simone found herself laughing at his dry observations about business meetings and social events. You're funny, she said as he finished a particularly entertaining story about a disastrous merger negotiation. I am? Very funny. You have perfect timing. Christopher looked pleased. Most people think I'm too serious. You're serious, but you're also funny, kind, and incredibly thoughtful. People just don't take the time to see past the business exterior. And you do. I'm beginning to. When they arrived in Paris, a car was waiting to take them to their hotel. The city was everything Simone had imagined. Elegant buildings, tree-lined streets, and an energy that felt both sophisticated and romantic. Their suite at the Plaza Athénée was spectacular. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Eiffel Tower, and the rooms were decorated in soft blues and golds that felt both luxurious and welcoming. This is incredible, Simone said, spinning around in the living room. I can't believe I'm actually in Paris. Christopher watched her with an expression she was beginning to recognize. Wonder mixed with something that looked like longing. Are you tired from the flight? He asked. We could rest before dinner. Actually, I'm too excited to rest. Could we walk around a little? Maybe get coffee and just explore? Of course. They spent the afternoon wandering through the streets near the hotel. Christopher proved to be an excellent guide, having visited Paris several times for business. He showed her hidden courtyards, explained the architecture, and stopped at a small cafe where they sat outside watching people pass by. This is perfect, Simone said, sipping her café au lait. Thank you for bringing me here. Thank you for wanting to come. Did you doubt I would? I thought you might prefer somewhere warmer. A beach, maybe. Christopher, you took me to the city I've dreamed of visiting my entire life, arranged a private tour of the most famous art museum in the world, and booked us a suite with a view of the Eiffel Tower. Why would I want to be anywhere else? He didn't answer, but she saw him smile for the first time since they'd arrived. That evening, they had dinner at a small bistro Christopher had discovered during a previous trip. The food was incredible and the wine loosened both their tongues. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing stories and opinions with the ease of old friends. Can I ask you something? Simone said over dessert. Anything. What did you think when you first saw me? Really think, not the diplomatic version. Christopher set down his wine glass. Honestly? I thought I was in trouble. Because I wasn't what you expected? Because you were everything I hadn't known I wanted. The words hung between them, more honest than anything he'd said before. Simone felt her pulse quicken. Christopher. I know. I'm breaking my own rules. Maybe the rules need to be broken. He reached across the table and took her hand. Maybe they do. Walking back to the hotel through the lamplit streets, their hands remained intertwined. Paris at night was magical, and Simone felt like she was in a fairy tale. At the suite, they hesitated outside their respective bedroom doors. Good night, Simone, Christopher said softly. Good night. But neither of them moved. They stood in the hallway, hands still linked, both knowing they were at a crossroads. Simone. Yes. I'm glad you're here. Not just for appearances or for the arrangement. I'm glad you're here with me. So am I. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. Sweet dreams. After he disappeared into his room, Simone stood alone in the hallway, touching the spot where his lips had touched her skin. Tomorrow would bring their tour of the Louvre, more discoveries about Paris, and more moments that would test Christopher's carefully maintained boundaries. But tonight, she was simply a woman in love with her husband in the most romantic city in the world. Even if neither of them was ready to admit it yet. The Louvre was everything Simone had dreamed it would be and more. Their private guide, Marie, led them through galleries filled with masterpieces while other tourists were restricted to separate areas. Christopher walked beside Simone, watching her face more than the paintings. The brushwork here, Simone said, standing before a Monet water lily painting. You can see how he built up the layers to create that shimmer on the water. You really understand this, Christopher said, admiring her knowledge. My art history professor in college was passionate about the Impressionists. She made us study not just what they painted but how they painted it. Marie nodded approvingly. You have an excellent eye, madam. Many visitors see only the pretty colors but you see the technique. They spent 3 hours in the museum, with Simone explaining composition and color theory while Christopher asked thoughtful questions. When they stopped for lunch at the museum cafe, he surprised her with his observations. That Degas ballet painting, he said. The way he positioned the dancers off-center. It made the scene feel more natural, like you were glimpsing a private moment. Exactly. That's called asymmetrical composition. It creates visual interest and draws the eye around the canvas. You should teach. Simone paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. What? You should teach art. You have a gift for making complex concepts accessible. I've never thought about teaching. Why not? I suppose I never believed I was qualified enough. Christopher leaned forward. Simone, you just spent 3 hours explaining artistic techniques to someone who knows nothing about art, and I found every word fascinating. You're more than qualified. That afternoon they walked along the Seine, stopping at bookstalls and street artists. Christopher bought her a small watercolor sketch of Notre Dame from a young artist, insisting it would look perfect in the guest house. You don't have to buy me things, she said as they continued walking. I know I don't have to. I want to. Why? Because you light up when you see something beautiful. And I like being the reason for that expression. They were growing comfortable with each other in a way that went beyond their business arrangement. Christopher held her hand naturally as they walked, pointed out things he thought would interest her, and listened to her observations about the city with genuine attention. That evening they attended the opera. Simone wore a stunning red dress from her new wardrobe, and Christopher wore a black tuxedo that made him look like he belonged on a magazine cover. You clean up well, Mr. Blake, she said as they entered the opera house. You're breathtaking, Mrs. Blake. The performance was magical, but Simone found herself more interested in watching Christopher's reactions. During the emotional arias, she saw his carefully controlled mask slip, revealing genuine emotion. Did you enjoy it? She asked during intermission. More than I expected. I usually find opera too emotional. Is that bad? It's inconvenient. Emotions complicate decision-making. They also make life worth living. Christopher was quiet as they returned to their seats for the second act. Later, walking back to the hotel, they talked about the music, the performances, the elaborate costumes and sets. Christopher's observations were insightful and revealed a sensitive side he rarely showed. Thank you for tonight, Simone said as they entered their suite. Thank you for enjoying it. Your enthusiasm makes everything more interesting. They stood in the living room, neither ready to say goodnight. The Eiffel Tower sparkled outside their windows, and soft music drifted up from the street below. Simone, Christopher said quietly. Yes. Would you like to sit on the balcony for a while? The view is incredible at night. They settled into chairs on the small balcony, wrapping themselves in the throws the hotel had provided. Paris spread out below them, twinkling with millions of lights. I can't believe this is real, Simone said. 3 weeks ago I was worried about paying rent. Now I'm in Paris with my husband, watching the Eiffel Tower sparkle. Do you miss it? Your old life. Parts of it. The independence, I suppose. Making my own decisions, small as they were. Do you feel like you've given up too much? Simone considered the question. Honestly? No. What I've gained is so much more than what I've lost. What have you gained? Security for my family. Beautiful experiences like this. And you. Christopher turned to look at her. Simone. I know we agreed to keep this simple, but it doesn't feel simple anymore. At least not for me. It hasn't felt simple since the day you walked into my study. Then why do we keep pretending it is? Christopher stood and walked to the balcony railing. Because I don't know how to do this, Simone. I don't know how to be a husband, how to love someone, how to be vulnerable without losing control. You don't have to figure it all out at once. What if I hurt you? What if I become possessive or demanding or try to change you? Simone joined him at the railing. What if you don't? What if you're exactly the man I think you are? And what kind of man is that? Kind, generous, thoughtful. Someone who notices when I light up looking at art. Someone who remembers that I wanted to see Paris. Someone who's afraid of love because he cares too much, not too little. Christopher turned to face her. In the soft light from the tower, his eyes were intense and vulnerable. I'm falling in love with you, he said quietly. And it terrifies me. I'm already in love with you, she replied. And it's the most wonderful feeling in the world. Simone. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. Just let yourself feel it. Christopher cupped her face in his hands. You make me want things I never thought I could have. Like what? A real marriage. A partner. Someone to share things with instead of just accomplishing them alone. You can have all of that. With you. If you want it. Instead of answering, Christopher kissed her. Not the brief, ceremonial kiss from their wedding, but a real kiss full of longing and promise. Simone melted into him, her arms wrapping around his neck. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. This changes everything, Christopher said. Good. He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. You're not afraid? Of course I'm afraid. But I'm more afraid of not taking this chance. They spent the next hour talking on the balcony, making plans and sharing dreams. Christopher told her about his vision for expanding the company internationally. Simone talked about her idea of teaching art to children. I could help you set up an art program, Christopher said. Find a space, buy supplies, whatever you need. You do that. I'd do anything to see you happy. When they finally said goodnight, it was with the understanding that everything had changed. They were no longer playing roles or maintaining careful distance. They were a couple, maybe even becoming a real family. The next morning brought their last day in Paris. They spent it walking through Montmartre, visiting art studios and galleries. Christopher bought Simone a set of professional watercolors from an art supply shop, along with brushes and papers. For when you start teaching, he said. You really think I should do it? I think you should do whatever makes you happy. And I think you'd be an incredible teacher. On the flight home, they sat closer together, Christopher's arm around Simone's shoulders as she dozed against his chest. When she woke, she found him watching her with an expression of such tenderness it took her breath away. What? She asked. Just thinking about how lucky I am. Lucky how? My mother arranged for me to marry a practical, unremarkable woman who wouldn't complicate my life. And instead, I got you. The most remarkable woman I've ever met, who's completely changed my world. Is that good or bad? Christopher kissed the top of her head. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. 3 weeks after their return from Paris, Simone was settled into a routine that felt surprisingly natural. She spent her mornings painting in the guest house's second bedroom, which Christopher had helped her convert into a studio. Her afternoons were devoted to research for the art education program she was developing, and her evenings were spent with Christopher, sharing dinner and conversation. The boundaries he'd so carefully established had dissolved without fanfare. They now ate breakfast together on the main house terrace, and Christopher often worked from home instead of going to his downtown office. Their relationship had evolved into something that looked and felt like a real marriage, except for one detail. They still slept in separate bedrooms. This morning was different. Christopher appeared at the studio door holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing an expression Simone had learned to recognize as barely contained excitement. I have news, he said, settling into the chair he'd brought in for exactly these morning visits. Good news or bad news? Potentially excellent news. The Hamilton Group merger went through yesterday. Simone set down her brush. Christopher, that's wonderful. I know how important this was to you. There's more. Eleanor Hamilton was so impressed with you at the wedding that she's recommending me for the International Business Coalition Board. It's exactly the kind of opportunity I've been working toward for years. I'm so proud of you. Christopher's smile faltered slightly. You should be proud of yourself. Eleanor specifically mentioned how poised and intelligent you were. She said I was fortunate to have found such an impressive wife. I was just being myself. Exactly. And apparently, yourself is exactly what I needed. Something in his tone made Simone pause. You sound almost surprised. Maybe I am. This arrangement has worked out better than I ever imagined. The word, arrangement, hit Simone like cold water. Over the past weeks, she'd begun thinking of their relationship as something real, something that had grown beyond their original business agreement. But Christopher's language reminded her that for all his kindness and attention, he might still see her as part of a successful business strategy. Simone. Christopher noticed her changed expression. What's wrong? Nothing. I'm glad the merger worked out. You're upset. I'm not upset. Christopher set down his coffee and leaned forward. Talk to me. What did I say? Simone turned back to her painting, a watercolor landscape of the gardens. You called our marriage an arrangement. It is an arrangement. Is it? Still. After Paris, after everything that's happened between us? Christopher was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. You don't know? I know that I care about you more than I ever expected to. I know that I look forward to seeing you every morning and that I've been happier these past few weeks than I can remember being. But I also know that none of this changes the fundamental facts of how we got here. Simone set down her brush and faced him. What fundamental facts? You married me to save your family. I married you to further my career. Those motivations don't just disappear because we've developed feelings for each other. Don't they? I don't know. Do they? The honest confusion in his voice made Simone's heart ache. Christopher, when you look at me, what do you see? What do you mean? Do you see your wife, or do you see a business arrangement that turned out well? Christopher stood and walked to the window overlooking the gardens. That's not a fair question. Why not? Because the answer is complicated. I'm listening. I see both. I see the woman I'm falling in love with, and I see the arrangement that made it possible for me to meet her. I can't separate the two. What if you could? What if we'd met under different circumstances? But we didn't. What if we had? Christopher turned from the window. Hypothetically. Hypothetically. If I'd met you at a coffee shop or a bookstore or anywhere else, I would have been immediately attracted to you. I would have asked you out, probably made a fool of myself trying to impress you, and counted myself lucky if you agreed to a second date. And then? Then I would have fallen in love with you the same way I'm falling in love with you now. Completely and terrifyingly. Then what's the problem? The problem is that we didn't meet at a coffee shop. We met because your family needed money and I needed a wife. Those aren't romantic origins, Simone. They don't have to define us forever. Don't they? Simone stood and walked to where Christopher stood by the window. Do you love me? That's not the point. It's exactly the point. Do you love me? Christopher's jaw tightened. Yes. Do you think I love you? I hope you do, but I'm not sure I trust it. Why not? Because you have every reason to convince yourself you love me. I've given you financial security, a beautiful home, experiences you've never had before. It would be natural for gratitude to feel like love. Simone felt tears prick her eyes. Is that what you think this is? Gratitude. I don't know what to think. Christopher, look at me. He met her eyes reluctantly. I didn't fall in love with your money or your house or your generosity, though I'm grateful for all of those things. I fell in love with the man who was afraid of his own feelings. The man who notices what makes me happy. The man who bought me art supplies because he believes I should teach. The man who spent 3 hours in the Louvre watching me more than the paintings because seeing me happy made him happy. Simone. I fell in love with you in Paris, sitting on that balcony, listening to you talk about your dreams. Not your business dreams, your real dreams. The ones you've never told anyone else. Christopher reached up and touched her cheek. I want to believe that. Then believe it. It's not that simple. Why does it have to be complicated? Because I've never had anything real before. Every relationship I've had has been based on what I could provide, not who I am. I don't know how to trust that this is different. What would convince you? Christopher was quiet for a long time. I don't know. That afternoon, Christopher left for a business dinner with potential investors. Simone spent the evening alone, thinking about their conversation and wondering if they could ever move beyond the circumstances that had brought them together. She was reading in the guest house living room when Christopher returned around 10 o'clock. He knocked softly and waited for her invitation before entering. "How was dinner?" she asked. "Productive. We secured funding for the European expansion." "That's wonderful." Christopher sat across from her, still in his business suit but with his tie loosened. "I've been thinking about our conversation this morning. And? I owe you an apology. I made it sound like I don't value what we have, and that's not true." "What is true?" "That I'm scared. I've built my entire life around control and certainty. Loving you means giving up both of those things." "Does it? Doesn't it? Love is inherently risky. You can't control how someone feels about you, and you can't be certain they won't leave." "Christopher, I'm not going to leave." "You say that now." "I say it because it's true." "How can you be sure?" Simone closed her book and leaned forward. "Because I've seen who you really are. I've seen your kindness, your vulnerability, your capacity for love. I've seen the man behind the businessman, and that's the man I fell in love with. What if he's not enough?" "Enough for what?" "To keep you happy. To give you the kind of life you deserve." "Christopher, you've already given me more than I ever dreamed possible. But none of the material things matter as much as this. You see me? Really see me. You pay attention to what makes me happy, what I'm passionate about, what I dream of doing with my life. You don't just love me, you know me." "I do know you." "Then trust what you know." Christopher stood and walked to her chair, kneeling beside it so they were at eye level. "I love you, Simone. Not as part of an arrangement, not because of what you've done for my career, but because you're you. You're kind and intelligent and beautiful, and you make me want to be better than I am. You don't need to be better than you are. I need to be brave enough to stop questioning this gift I've been given." Simone cupped his face in her hands. "What gift?" "You. This chance at real happiness. Then be brave." Christopher kissed her then, and for the first time, there was no hesitation, no careful distance. It was a kiss full of love and promise and hope. When they broke apart, Christopher rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right," he said. "I want to be the husband you deserve. You already are. I want to be better. I want to be the kind of man you'd choose even without the financial security." "Christopher, I did choose you. Every day since Paris I've chosen you. Not your money, not your house, not your business success. You. Then will you choose me again?" "What do you mean?" Christopher pulled back to look at her. "Move into the main house. Not just for meals but completely. Share my bedroom, share my life, make this marriage real in every way." Simone's heart pounded. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure that I love you and I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of our lives." "Yes. Yes. Yes, I'll move into the main house. Yes, I'll share your bedroom. Yes, I'll make this marriage real with you." Christopher stood and lifted her into his arms, spinning her around the living room. "When?" he asked, setting her down. "When what? When will you move in?" Simone looked around the guest house that had been her home for the past 2 months. It was beautiful and comfortable, but it had never felt like home the way Christopher's presence did. "How about right now?" Christopher's smile was brilliant. "Right now? Unless you've changed your mind." "Never." They spent the next hour moving Simone's belongings to the main house. It didn't take long. Most of her things were still packed in boxes as if she'd been unconsciously waiting for this moment. When everything was settled in Christopher's bedroom, they stood together looking at her paintings propped against his dresser, her books mixed with his on the nightstand. "It looks right," Christopher said. "It feels right." "Simone." "Yes. Thank you." "For what?" "For being patient with me. For not giving up when I was too scared to admit what I wanted. Thank you for being worth waiting for." That night, they fell asleep in each other's arms for the first time, no longer pretending their marriage was just an arrangement, no longer afraid of the love that had grown between them. Outside, the gardens they both loved bloomed in the moonlight, and inside the house, two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way finally allowed themselves to be completely happy. For 2 weeks, Simone and Christopher lived as true newlyweds. They woke up together, shared breakfast on the terrace, and Christopher often worked from home so they could have lunch together. Their evenings were spent cooking dinner side by side, talking about their days, and making plans for Simone's art education program. Christopher had surprised her by renovating a space in downtown that would be perfect for teaching classes. He'd also arranged meetings with the directors of 3 local schools who were interested in after-school art programs. "I can't believe you did all this," Simone said as they toured the bright, airy studio space he prepared for her. "I can't believe I waited so long to do it. Seeing you light up when you talk about teaching, it's obvious this is what you're meant to do. What if I'm not good at it? You'll be incredible. You have the knowledge, the passion, and the patience. Those children are going to be lucky to have you." That afternoon, Angela visited the estate for the first time since the wedding. Simone gave her a tour of the house and gardens, ending in the art studio where several of Simone's new paintings were displayed. "This place is like a fairy tale," Angela said, admiring a watercolor of the rose garden. "And you look happier than I've ever seen you." "I'm happy. Genuinely, completely happy. It shows. You're glowing." They settled in the living room with tea and pastries Mrs. Rodriguez had prepared. Angela kicked off her shoes and curled up in one of the elegant chairs as if she belonged there. "So tell me everything," Angela said. "What's married life really like?" "It's wonderful. Christopher is nothing like I expected." "How so?" "He's funnier than I thought he'd be. And more thoughtful. Yesterday he surprised me with tickets to a gallery opening because he remembered me mentioning the artist weeks ago." "That's sweet. And he listens to me, really listens. When I talk about the art program, he asks questions and offers suggestions. He makes me feel like my dreams matter." Angela smiled knowingly. "You're in love." "Completely. And him?" "He tells me he loves me every day. Sometimes I catch him just watching me with this expression of wonder, like he can't believe I'm real." "That's beautiful, Simone. I'm so happy for you." "Thank you. I know this whole situation was unusual, but it's turned into something real." Angela was quiet for a moment, stirring her tea. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't needed the money? If your family hadn't been in financial trouble?" Simone paused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, do you think you and Christopher would have found each other under different circumstances?" "I think about it sometimes." "Why?" "I was just thinking about Marcus." Simone's heart skipped. Marcus was her ex-boyfriend, the one who had made her feel plain and unremarkable. They dated for 2 years before breaking up 6 months ago. "What about Marcus?" "He called me yesterday. He heard about your marriage and wanted to know how to reach you." "Why would he want to reach me?" "He said he made a mistake letting you go. He wanted to tell you he realized what he lost." Simone set down her teacup. "That's ridiculous. Marcus never appreciated me when we were together." "I know. But he seemed pretty upset. He kept saying he should have proposed to you, should have seen how special you were." "Well, it's too late now." "Is it?" "Angela, I'm married. Happily married. To a man you met because you needed money. That's not why I married him." "Isn't it? At least partially?" Simone stood and walked to the window. "Why are you bringing this up?" "Because I care about you. I want to make sure you're with Christopher because you love him, not because you're grateful to him." "Of course I love him. But would you have noticed him if you hadn't needed what he could provide?" The question hit Simone like a physical blow. "That's not fair." "Maybe not, but it's worth thinking about. Marcus knew you when you were just Simone Washington, not Mrs. Christopher Blake. He loved you for who you were, not for how you looked on his arm at business dinners. Marcus never loved me. He took me for granted. People change. People realize their mistakes." Simone turned from the window. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I love you like a sister and I want to make sure you're making choices from a place of strength, not gratitude." "I am." "Are you? Really?" "If Christopher lost all his money tomorrow, if you had to go back to your old apartment and your old job, would you still be happy with him?" "Yes." "Without question?" "Without question." Angela seemed to relax. "Then I'm glad. I just had to ask." "Did you really? Or did Marcus ask you to plant doubts in my mind?" "He may have mentioned hoping you'd reconsider your choices." "Angela, I told him you were happy." "But he said if you were truly happy, you wouldn't have married someone you'd only known for 3 weeks. You need to leave." "Simone." "No. You came into my home and deliberately tried to undermine my marriage. I think you should go." Angela gathered her purse, looking genuinely sorry. "I didn't mean to upset you. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. I was okay until you got here." After Angela left, Simone sat alone in the living room, her happy mood completely destroyed. The questions Angela had raised echoed in her mind, bringing up doubts she thought she'd resolved. When Christopher came home from his business dinner that evening, he found Simone quiet and distracted. "How was your day?" he asked, loosening his tie as they walked to the kitchen. "Fine. Angela visited." "That's nice. How is she?" "She's fine." Christopher paused, studying her face. "You seem upset. Did something happen?" "No. Just tired." But as they prepared dinner together, Christopher's questions about her day began to feel intrusive rather than caring. When he mentioned a business trip to New York the following week, Simone found herself wondering if he was taking her because he enjoyed her company or because she made him look good to his associates. "You're quiet tonight," Christopher said over dinner. "Am I? Did Angela say something to upset you?" "Why would you assume that?" "Because you were happy this morning and now you seem distant." Simone set down her fork. "Do you take me to business events because you like having me there, or because I make you look good?" Christopher blinked. "What kind of question is that?" "A direct one." "Both, I suppose. I like having you with me, and yes, you do make an excellent impression." "Why?" "Just wondering." "Simone, what's really going on?" "Nothing. I'm going to bed early tonight." She left Christopher sitting alone at the dinner table, looking confused and concerned. That night, Simone lay awake staring at the ceiling while Christopher slept beside her. Angela's questions circled through her mind like vultures. Would she have noticed Christopher if she hadn't needed his help? Was she in love with him or with the security he represented? Would he be interested in her if she weren't the perfect society wife? The questions felt poisonous, but she couldn't stop thinking about them. Over the next few days, the distance between them grew. Christopher tried to bridge it with small gestures and gentle questions, but Simone found herself pulling away, second-guessing every interaction. When he surprised her with her favorite flowers, she wondered if it was genuine affection or calculated charm. When he asked about her art classes, she questioned whether he really cared or was just maintaining his image as a supportive husband. "Simone," Christopher said one evening after she'd given particularly short answers to all his questions. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About whatever is making you withdraw from me." "I'm not withdrawing." "Yes, you are. For 4 days you've been polite but distant. You've stopped sharing your thoughts about your art program, you've declined 2 social invitations, and you barely speak to me unless I ask you a direct question." Simone looked up from the book she'd been pretending to read. "Maybe I'm just tired." "For 4 days." "Maybe." Christopher sat on the edge of the bed, his expression serious. "Did I do something wrong?" "No." "Then what happened? What changed?" Simone closed her book. "Do you love me, Christopher?" "You know I do." "Do you love me or do you love what I represent?" "What's the difference?" "The difference is everything." Christopher was quiet for a long moment. "Where is this coming from?" "Just answer the question." "I love you, Simone. You as a person. Your laugh, your intelligence, your passion for art, your kindness. I love the way you see beauty in everything, the way you make me want to be better than I am. But you also love how I look at business dinners. Yes, I appreciate that you're gracious in social situations. But that's not why I love you." "How can you be sure?" "Because I was attracted to you before you ever attended a business function. I was falling in love with you during our private conversations, not our public appearances." Simone wanted to believe him, but Angela's questions had planted too much doubt. "What if I embarrassed you in public? What if I said the wrong thing at an important dinner? Then we'd deal with it together." "Simone, why are you asking me these things?" "Because I need to know if you love me for myself or for what I can do for your career." Christopher's expression hardened slightly. "Is that what you really think of me?" "I don't know what to think anymore. After everything we've shared, everything we've built together, you think I'm using you for my career? I think we both got something we needed from this arrangement, and maybe we're confusing gratitude and convenience for love." Christopher stood abruptly. "Convenience? We're both getting what we want. You get a wife who makes you look good, I get financial security. Maybe we're just good at playing our roles." "You think I've been playing a role? Haven't we both?" Christopher stared at her for a long moment, his face a mask of hurt and anger. "If that's what you believe, then maybe we need to reconsider this entire marriage." He left the room and Simone heard the guest room door close down the hall. For the first time since their wedding, they slept apart. And for the first time since falling in love with him, Simone wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. 3 days passed in cold politeness. Christopher went to his office early and returned late, eating dinner alone in his study while Simone ate in the kitchen with Mrs. Rodriguez. They spoke only when necessary, their conversations limited to logistics and schedules. The guest room became Christopher's refuge again, though Simone often saw his light on late into the night. She lay alone in their formerly shared bedroom, missing his presence but unable to bridge the gap her doubts had created. On Thursday evening, Christopher knocked on the bedroom door. "Come in," Simone called. He entered carrying a manila folder, his expression carefully neutral. "I have some papers for you to review." "What kind of papers?" "An amendment to our marriage contract." Simone's heart stopped. "What kind of amendment?" "Given your concerns about our motivations, I thought we should clarify the terms of our arrangement." He handed her the folder with the same businesslike manner he'd used during their first meeting. Inside was a legal document that made her stomach clench. "You want to end the marriage?" she asked, scanning the papers. "I want to give you a choice. A real choice without financial pressure." "I don't understand." Christopher sat in the chair across from the bed, maintaining careful distance. "The amendment states that regardless of whether our marriage continues, your family's debts remain paid, your brother's education is fully funded, and you receive the full settlement we originally agreed upon." "Whether our marriage continues?" "You can choose to stay married to me because you want to, or you can choose to leave knowing your family will be secure either way." Simone stared at the document. "Why would you do this?" "Because you were right to question our motivations. We both entered this marriage for practical reasons. If we're going to stay married, it should be for better reasons. And if I choose to leave? Then you leave with my blessing and my gratitude for the time we had together." "Just like that. Just like that." Christopher's voice was steady, but Simone could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands gripped the arms of the chair. "How long do I have to decide?" "Take as long as you need." "What will you do if I leave?" Christopher was quiet for a moment. "Find a way to be happy for you." "And the Hamilton Group? Your business goals?" "I'll manage. I always have." Simone looked down at the papers again. By removing the financial pressure, Christopher had eliminated her primary reason for staying. If she remained married to him now, it would be purely by choice. "Christopher?" "Yes." "If I choose to stay, what would you want our marriage to look like?" "Real. Honest. Based on love instead of obligation." "And if I choose to leave?" Pain flickered across his face. "Then I'd want you to be happy." After he left, Simone sat alone with the papers, finally understanding the gift he'd given her. True choice. The freedom to decide her future based on her heart instead of her circumstances. That night, unable to sleep, she went to her art studio and painted until dawn. Canvas after canvas, working through her emotions with color and brushstrokes. By morning, the floor was covered with paintings and her answer was clear. She found Christopher in the kitchen, already dressed for work despite the early hour. "We need to talk," she said. "Did you review the papers?" "Yes. But first, I need to tell you what happened with Angela." Christopher poured himself coffee with deliberate concentration. "I'm listening." "She told me Marcus contacted her. He wants me back." Christopher's hand stilled on the coffee cup. "I see." "She asked me some questions that made me doubt everything. About whether we would have found each other under different circumstances. About whether I love you or just the security you represent." "Valid questions." "Are they?" "Because I've spent 3 days thinking about them and I realized something." "What's that?" Simone stepped closer. "I don't care how we met." Christopher looked up from his coffee. "You don't?" "I care about who we became together. I care about the way you listen when I talk about art. I care about how you surprise me with thoughtful gestures. I care about the way you make me laugh, the way you challenge me to be better, the way you see potential in me that I didn't see in myself." "Simone, I painted last night. Dozens of paintings. And you know what every single one of them was about?" "What?" "You. Not your money, not your house, not your business success. You. The man who was afraid of his own feelings. The man who took me to Paris because he remembered I wanted to see art museums. The man who's building me a studio because he believes in my dreams." Christopher set down his coffee cup, his full attention on her. "I don't love you because you saved my family, Christopher. I love you because of who you are when you're saving my family. I love your generosity, your kindness, your determination to take care of the people you love." "What about Marcus?" "What about him? He had 2 years to see me, really see me, and he never did. You saw me in 20 minutes. Maybe he sees you differently now." "I don't care how he sees me now. I care how you see me." Christopher stepped closer. "How do I see you?" "Like I'm precious. Like I'm worth listening to. Like I'm beautiful even when I'm covered in paint and arguing with you about art techniques. You are all of those things. And you're the man I want to spend my life with. Not because of the contract or the arrangement or the security. Because I love you. Christopher cupped her face in his hands. Are you sure? I'm sure that I choose you. Today, tomorrow, and every day after that. Even without the financial benefits? Christopher, I'd choose you if we lived in a tiny apartment and ate cereal for dinner. I'd choose you if we had to start over with nothing. I'd choose you because you make me better, and because I hope I make you better too. You make me human, he said softly. Is that good? It's everything. Christopher kissed her then, a kiss full of relief and love and promise. When they broke apart, both were crying. I was terrified I'd lost you, he admitted. You can't lose me. I'm yours. Forever. Forever. That morning, Christopher canceled all his meetings. They spent the day together, talking through their fears and doubts, rebuilding the trust that had been shaken. Christopher tore up the contract amendment, and Simone threw away Angela's phone number. I have something for you, Christopher said that evening as they sat on their balcony watching the sunset. What? He handed her a small wrapped box. Inside was a key attached to a simple silver keychain. What's this for? The downtown studio. It's yours regardless of anything else. Whether you teach 1 child or 100, whether we're married or not, it belongs to you. Christopher. I believe in you, Simone. I believe in your talent and your passion and your ability to change children's lives through art. I can't accept this. Yes, you can. Because it's not charity or obligation. It's an investment in someone I love. What if I fail? Then you try again. But you won't fail. How do you know? Because I know you. And the woman I know doesn't give up on things that matter to her. 6 months later, Simone's art program was thriving. 20 children from 3 different schools attended her after-school classes, and she had a waiting list of more interested students. Christopher attended every art show and exhibition, proudly introducing himself as Simone's husband to anyone who would listen. Their marriage had evolved into something neither of them had imagined when they'd first shaken hands in his study. They were partners in every sense of the word. In business, in dreams, in daily life, and in love. Do you ever regret it? Simone asked one evening as they walked through the gardens. Regret what? The way we started. The arrangement, the contract, all of it. Christopher stopped walking and pulled her into his arms. Never. Because it brought me you. Even though it was unconventional? Especially because it was unconventional. We got to know each other without the usual dating games and pretenses. We built our relationship on honesty and mutual respect. And love. And love, he agreed. The love that grew between us despite all our efforts to prevent it. Or maybe because of our efforts to prevent it. Christopher laughed. You may be right. We're both stubborn enough to fall in love just to prove we couldn't. As they reached the lake where they'd had their first real conversation, Simone reflected on how much had changed. The scared woman who'd walked into Christopher's study in a green dress had become confident and purposeful. The guarded businessman who'd been afraid of his own feelings had become a loving husband who wore his heart on his sleeve. Christopher? Yes. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. For believing in me. For taking a chance on love even when it scared you. Thank you for being brave enough to marry a stranger. Thank you for becoming someone I couldn't imagine living without. They stood together by the water, surrounded by the gardens they both loved, in the place where they'd first begun to trust each other. The arrangement that had brought them together was long forgotten, replaced by a love story that would last the rest of their lives. Christopher Blake had expected a plain bride who wouldn't complicate his carefully ordered world. Instead, he'd found a beautiful woman who'd shown him that the best complications were the ones that led to happiness. Anne Simone Washington had expected to endure a business marriage for 2 years to save her family. Instead, she'd found a partner who loved her dreams as much as his own and who'd given her the courage to become who she was meant to be. Their love story hadn't begun with a fairy tale meet-cute or love at first sight. It had begun with a practical arrangement and grown into something neither of them had believed possible, which they both agreed was the most beautiful love story of all.